today's episode, I have the absolute privilege of sitting down with my friend Sherri Coale. Now, Sherri Coale is a Hall of Fame coach coaching 25 years at the University of Oklahoma. She is now a writer, she is a keynote speaker, and more importantly, I feel Sherri is an incredible storyteller. And that's actually how Sherri and I got connected. As I was looking 2 years ago, I was trying to hit a refresh within our athletic department, and I was looking for some inspiration, some guidance, some ideas as we rolled out a new culture within our athletics. And I came across Sherri's book, Rooted to Rise. And immediately after I read the first story about the redwoods and the unique root system, I was absolutely hooked. And this is what this conversation is about today. It's just a collection of stories, people that have influenced Sherri's life, the impact she has had on her players, the environment and the experience she created every single day. And really what it comes down to is just a collection of stories of how we can all thrive in all facets of life. So I know you're going to have so many great takeaways from this conversation. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this conversation with my friend, Sherri Coale. Sherri Coale, welcome to the Being Champions podcast.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here.
I think the honor is all mine, Sherri. I'm so excited. I woke up this morning. I was so excited to have this conversation. We connected 2 years ago. Just to give our listeners some background, 2 years ago, I was trying to do a refresh with athletics, and I was trying to find a theme. And I was actually listening to the Learner and Leader podcast with Ryan Hawk, who I know you know well and is a colleague of yours. And I heard your conversation about Rooted to Rise. So I wanted to do some investigation of my own. I start reading the book, and Sherri, as soon as I opened up the book and I heard the story and I read the story about the redwoods, I was hooked.
It's a pretty magnetic metaphor. When I was writing Rooted to Rise was not the title. I had a working title, and the publishers asked me if I was married to the title. And I said, absolutely not. And they said, all right, let's explore it. And so we began to talk about the different stories and how they fit together. And I said to the publisher, it's like the story of the redwoods that I told my team every year at the start of the year. And she's like, no, tell it to me. And so I told her about how the redwoods roots don't grow down, they grow out, and they wrap around each other, and they hold each other up in times of adversity. And that was always a central theme with our teams, because obviously we were going to face adversity. And it's, would we reach out to one another when that happens? Would we get stronger instead of weaker in the face of it? And she said, I think your title is there. And so I went to bed that night, woke up the next morning and had the title and rearranged the stories in the book and divided them into 4 parts that coincided with the facets of a redwood tree. And there you have it.
Yeah, I love it. And Sherri, I just want to share a line. And this was what really drew me to the redwood story and really drew me to what we wanted to create on our campus. And really, when you open up the book, it says, we don't become who we are on our own, and we sure don't stand there without assistance. We are shaped and molded by those whose paths we cross. It is the intersection of our lives that make us who we are. We are grounded by others. We are fueled by others. We are elbow locked with others as we reach and swell and grow. And Sherri, I just love that image, and it's about us coming together, right? And I love using the symbol of the circle, and I love this idea of the redwoods connecting each other, because when we're elbow locked, we are side by side, right? There's no one in front of us, there's no one in back of us. Like, we are going through this together. So what was really cool, Sherri, is I reached out to you. I was like, hey, I would love to use Rooted to Rise for our theme. And for here we are 2 years later, we are elbow locked. We have gone through a lot of adversity. We have gone through hurricanes. We have gone through all these things that life throws at us. But here we are, we're still standing and we're rising together.
I love that. I love that. And people who are connected at the core can do remarkable things in the face of adversity and not in the face of adversity. And when you're trying to achieve, when you're just trying to elevate, you can so much more together than you can do by yourself.
Yeah, 100%. And then Sherry, I was trying to think about what I wanted to talk about today with you. And what I love about your book, Sherry, is you are such an amazing storyteller, right? This isn't a how to play basketball. This isn't a how to write the best tactics and strategy. This is how to thrive in life. And both of your books, Rooted to Rise, and then you just released the Compost Files, just finished reading that, another amazing book. So really what I wanted to do today, Sherry, is just share some stories and share your writing and share some of the things you've learned. And I think the biggest thing, Sherry, my big takeaway is you're an amazing teacher. And I know when you shared in the book Rooted to Rise, you had some amazing teachers in your life. You had Miss Mitchell, you had Miss Lewis, you had Dr. Tippins. And for me, like I always try to push our coaches to understand that we are teachers first, right? Our classroom looks different. You know, we're not sitting in a classroom with our desks. We're on a basketball court, we're on a soccer field, we're in the weight room. But at the end of the day, we are teachers. So Sherry, what have you learned from those people that have influenced you? What have you learned about teaching?
Well, first of all, before I answer that question, I want to kind of go back to what you said just a second ago, which was this is a book of stories. Both of
Yeah,
these books are books of stories. They're not prescriptive. I write nonfiction, but I don't feel pulled to write prescriptive nonfiction. You can see from the bookshelf behind me, I have
yeah,
a million books, and
yeah,
many of them are prescriptive, and I love those. But it's not the call that I feel in writing. I prefer to throw out a story and let people learn from it, take from it what they will, apply
yeah,
it to their lives wherever they happen to be at the time. And so when I set out to write after walking away from coaching for over 30 years, I began to write stories about people that had crossed paths with me. And I didn't have an idea of this is what I want this to be, this is what I want this to look like, this is how the through line is going to form. I just sat down and started remembering stories.
yeah,
And many of them, I don't think coincidentally, I think probably because that's how life happens. Many of the stories stemmed from teachers because they're
yeah,
so impactful in our lives. Everybody has at least one teacher that they can
yeah,
think of, and they go back to, boy, that person changed my life.
yeah,
And most of us have more than one, and we have them along the way: elementary school, middle school, high school, college, whatever. We have those
yeah,
teachers, and then even post school, we have those mentors that teach us still. So one of the stories in the book is about my middle school English teacher, whose name was Miss Mitchell, and she was very, very challenging, had really, really high expectations for us, but was a different sort of communicator. I remember sitting in her class, remember exactly where my seat was next to the window on the side of the classroom. Um, I remember thinking, this woman is in love with literature. Like she
yeah,
just is in love with literature. She talked about it at a different level than any of us squirming around, looking at the clock in our seats in middle school wanted to or could understand. But she challenged me in a very subtle way, and she challenged me with John Steinbeck's The Pearl.
yeah,
And I read that book and I thought, wow, first of all, this is hard. Second of all, I'm not sure I understand what he's really trying to say. But at the end of it all, I remember thinking, words have such magic.
yeah,
When strung together well, they can help you think and help you
mhm,
feel and help you understand. And there were so many hidden meanings in that novel by Steinbeck that I was then hooked
yeah,
on the English language and on pieces of literature, classic and current. And then I was passed on from Miss Mitchell to Mrs. Lewis, who was my high school English teacher. And ironically, just this past week, in one of the readings that I did at a local bookstore, there was a gentleman in the audience when I asked if there were any questions who raised his hand and said, I don't really have any questions, but I want you to know that my mom is Jolene Lewis. So it
that's
was
crazy. Yeah,
yeah, it was my high school English
yeah,
teacher's son who has grown up with grown up children now. But Mrs. Lewis was a tiny little woman, and I'm 5'3" on a good day. So when I say
right,
she's
yeah, yeah,
tiny, she's
yeah,
really tiny. But she was a tough uh, teacher with high expectations. And regardless of what I wrote, she always pushed me to shrink the gaps, to clarify the images, to make a better, more succinct point. She was always pushing me, always urging me. And I love that. I fed off of that.
Yeah.
She wrote in my senior yearbook, I expect to see a novel with your name scrawled across the front of it someday. She will probably never know how often I thought of that. I
Yeah.
didn't open that yearbook and look at it all the time, but I thought about it a lot. And I remember coming home I went to college to play basketball, came home one weekend, and you didn't get very many weekends off, but I came home to go to a football game. I was still in my sweaty gear. I had jumped in the car straight after practice and driven home for the high school football team to high school football game to see my friends who had gone to different colleges. I was the only person from my school that had gone where I went, and so some of them had gone together, and it was going to be
Yeah.
great to go back and see everybody. And I remember Mrs. Lewis walking up to me on the bleachers and grabbing me by the shoulders, again, a little bit smaller than me, so grabbing me by the shoulders and saying,
Yeah.
I know you're doing this basketball thing right now, and that's awesome. But I still expect to see a novel with your name scrawled across the front of it someday.
Yeah.
And so when I wrote Rooted to Rise and sent her a copy, it was a really endearing moment. It was one of those things that, just sits in a box in my head now still. Her reaction to it, she's part of it, and you could
Yeah.
see that she felt that involvement in it all because she was a champion of my writing, and she taught me a lot about not just writing, but how to read in such a way so that it helped me swell. Like it gave me
Yeah.
room. It gave
Yeah.
me room.
Yeah, and I love Sherri how you said our words are magic. Like think about that, especially as us as coaches, as leaders. Like when we show up in front of our student athletes, the impact we can have. And thinking about your teachers and thinking about some teachers I've had, it all started with their belief in us, right? And sometimes you need that leader to say, "I believe in you first." Sherri, one day you're going to write a novel. And that stuck with you for how many years? Like it's crazy. So it's like one of those things as coaches recognizing our words matter, right? And it's challenging our kids and supporting our kids, but understanding the impact we really have.
I think sticky language is such a big deal for coaches. Saying words that resonate and will stick in a kid's head,
Yeah,
and call them to a certain feeling or a certain expectation or a certain performance standard. I think language, we don't always give it the credit that it deserves, what it can do,
yeah,
specific language. And, our kids need to be impacted in different ways.
yeah,
Some need a lot of words, some need a handwritten note, some need a look, some
yeah,
need a pat on the back, some need a little bit higher bar. I know
yeah,
that was always a motivating factor for me was if one of my teachers or coaches would ask for a little more than I had done, whatever that was as if they had said, "You're fantastic. Way to
yeah,
go. You're a champion." They didn't need to
yeah,
say those words to me. They just needed to move that bar,
yeah.
and that conveyed that. So I think as coaches and teachers, it's really important to know our students. Once we know our students and our athletes, then we can best figure out how to speak to them and treat them in a way that helps them move forward. Everybody has a different sort of love language, if you will, a way that motivates or inspires them. And it's up to us as teachers and coaches and leaders to figure out what that is and to treat those students and those athletes appropriately.
Yeah, and as I hear you talk, share the one word that just pops in my head is connection, right? And that's what it's about as coaches is winning the relationship game first. Steve Kerr said that when he took the job with the Golden State Warriors, they said, "Steve, how did you do it? What was the most important thing? How did you start winning right away?" And he said, "The most important thing I did was I won the relationship game." Right. And it's being able to connect on a deep level and be able to meet our athletes where they're at. I feel like sometimes as coaches and sometimes as teachers and as leaders, we have these expectations, but we're not meeting our kids where they're at. And I think one of the stories you share in Rooted to Rise is talking about asking better questions. And these are some things that you learned from Dr. Tippins in your Shakespeare class was the art of asking questions and not just telling. I feel like as coaches, as teachers, we love to tell, but then we forget to ask and get to that deeper level. So what are your thoughts on how can we be better at asking questions and being more curious as leaders?
Well, I do think that coaches are world-class tellers. We're
Yeah,
so good
we're
at it.
great at it. We are really good.
Put your hand here and your other hand here and your foot there. And there's a certain amount of that that's necessary when you're teaching physical skill. You can
Yeah,
ask a dance instructor where they put their toe matters. It's
yeah,
incredibly important, but you have to move beyond that. And what asking questions does is it builds ruts within minds. When we have to search for answers, we are less likely to forget them. When
yeah,
we have to search to find, then it becomes ours and we hang on to it. What we're told may sit in our heads for a while. Maybe a little bit of it will take root and grow, but a lot of it just keeps on going. We hear it for a minute and then it's gone. But when we have to grapple and dig and search for it, then we have ruts that we can go back to revisit. And I think that's how neuromuscularly, I think that's how we really learn. In a
yeah,
sport like basketball, where things are moving and changing all the time, players have to learn to be decision makers. They have to learn how to decide when to do what. And a
yeah,
teller focuses on the what,
yeah,
and asker focuses on the when.
yeah,
And that's a tough thing for a coach to learn how to do for a couple of reasons. Number one, because practice is so much cleaner and prettier and
yeah,
more efficient feeling when
yeah,
we're telling,
yeah.
because we're like little drill sergeants and people are running around doing exactly what we say. When we stop and ask, it gets awkward.
Hmm.
It gets a little messy.
Yeah,
Sometimes we get answers that aren't correct. They're not even in the same planetary alignment, and we have to
yeah,
figure out how to go get it and pull it back in. Sometimes you have those alpha kids that are going to answer everything. And
yeah,
so everybody else is off the hook. And if they're off the hook, that means they've checked out. So you have to
yeah,
be a little bit creative in when you throw a name in at the end of a question, not the start of a question, so that everybody stays glued in until the very end. So there are some techniques and there are some tactics that make you a better asker, but
yeah,
curiosity drives it. What do
yeah,
you want to know? Like, I want to know, why did you decide to cut then? And if a player says, I don't know, that was always the only wrong answer you could give.
yeah, yeah,
I want you to reach. I want you to think about what were the signals that you looked at. And once you become aware of those, then unconsciously you get better at reading those. It's not like you're every time you're like, okay, what did she do with her head? Where was her left foot? You begin to sense that and pick that up simply
yeah,
because of the awareness. And that's the beginning of building that rut in your brain
yeah,
of what's going on around me. Oh, there's an opening there. How did I know there's an opening there? What happened? And so asking players what they saw, what it felt like in there. And
yeah,
they'll go, it felt crowded. Okay, why did it feel crowded? Well, because our post player was there. Okay, how could you alleviate that? How could you create extra space instead of making that crowded feel? And when that felt crowded, what did that do to you? Well, I got anxious and I felt like I needed to get rid of the ball. Okay, and so you start unwinding and unpacking. That's how players learn. I feel like it took me a long time in my career to be able to become as good of an asker on the court as I was in an English classroom.
yeah,
And I think that's probably part of a paradigm that's set up for us when we're learning how to teach. Asking questions is important when you're learning how to coach. It's not always been such a point of emphasis. It certainly wasn't when I was coming through.
yeah,
So it took a while to transfer. But once it sort of clicked for me, that asking was maybe the best way they could learn, I immediately hearkened back to my experience in college with my Shakespeare teacher, who was amazing, and immediately clicked to me the magic of his technique. He would come in every day, kind of lean on the edge of a table, sit perch, I guess is the best word, on the edge of a
yeah,
table, and kind
yeah,
of swing his leg, and he would start to ask us questions
yeah,
about Hamlet or about um, Ophelia. He would ask, and then we would answer, and we would never know if we were right or wrong because there wasn't such
right,
a thing. The
yeah,
question was, what did you see in this passage? What do you think about this? And I would leave every day and think, he's the smartest person I ever met. I
right, yeah,
could not wait to get back to class every day, even though we didn't have daily quizzes.
yeah,
He did not take attendance. I did not miss his class
Yeah.
because I learned while I was in there and it stuck. I would be doing something else that evening and I would be thinking back in my brain to one of the questions that he posed while perched on the edge of the table.
Yeah.
And if that affected me as a learner, then I knew that had to be an effective practice that I could pass on as a teacher and a coach.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And there's so many, like my wheels are just spinning right now, Sherry, just with ideas and thoughts. And, I love how, by asking questions, we're giving ownership to our kids in the learning process, right? Learning is done by the athlete, not to the athlete. So I think that's such an important thing. And a lot of times we sometimes as coaches, we ask questions and we're not even looking for the answer. But again, it comes back to that curiosity and getting that deeper understanding. And you kept using the words like glue and stick and stuck. And I think that transitions well to your new book, The Compost File. You actually had a whole section about that and curiosity and talking about the Gorilla Glue and the benefits of creating an environment where you have curious athletes. So could you talk about that real quick? Just the Gorilla Glue story and the benefits of creating this environment where we do have curious athletes who are seeking understanding and seeking more knowledge.
Well, I my first memory of books comes from going to the library with my grandmother when I was pre-K, before school.
Yeah.
There would be one day a week, they had a film strip series, and it was one of those clunky projectors where the tape actually went
Yeah.
around and you
Yeah.
could hear it, click, 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 and then it would roll. And it would project Curious George on the cinder block wall at the library. And I was absolutely enthralled by Curious George. I
Yeah.
actually have a picture of him in my office, a little painting of Curious George in my office, because
Yeah.
he was such a an inspiration to me in that things didn't always work out perfect for him. Matter of fact, most of the time he got himself into a ridiculous mess.
Yeah.
But what he was every day was curious. He wanted to know why and how and when, and he would chase that curiosity. And of course,
Yeah.
his foil was the man in the yellow hat who was always there to provide an opportunity for George to learn the lesson. But
Yeah.
my curiosity began there at a very, very young age, and then was fueled by books and by reading and by interesting teachers
Yeah.
throughout my life. And then as I've gotten older, it's been reignited, I guess. I don't know that it ever went away, but it has taken on a new color now as I am a grandmother and I
Yeah.
watch my little granddaughters discover the world. There
Yeah.
is nothing like wonder in the eyes of a child, their curious nature, the questions they ask that we don't know the answers to,
Yeah.
cause us to continue to think and grapple. And I love that. And I think we have to remember as teachers and coaches that our athletes, they have a curiosity in them somewhere.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't come out. Sometimes we think they don't care about things. They may present apathy. It may not seem like they want to dig or they want to work hard enough to find out the why behind something. But I feel strongly that there is a curiosity gene within everyone, and it's a
Yes.
teacher or a coach's job to find that and unlock it.
Yeah.
Find something, find a question, find an experience, find a shared moment that can ignite that curiosity gene and then just build on it because that's what will create the relationships that
Yeah.
allow you to impact them.
I love it, Sherry. And this is why I wanted to talk to you so much because this whole conversation has nothing to do with looking at scoreboards, right? We're not looking at tactics. We're not looking at strategies. What we're really diving into, and I think this is such a critical part for us as coaches and teachers and leaders, is we're trying to help our this next generation discover the best versions of themselves, right? It's about creating better people, not just better athletes. And for me, like there's so many stories within both of your books about how we can just learn how to thrive and wake up with more of a purpose and having more intention. And there's a couple stories, Sherry, within both of your books. I love the story about the gold ball. I love the story about your Norman High School basketball team. So I was wondering if we can kind of transition and we'll start talking a little bit more about focusing on what's really important, getting away from this whole win at all costs mentality in today's society. I mean, there's NIL deals. We have it at the high school level now. So being able to focus on the right thing. So I was wondering if you could share that story about your Norman high school team.
Yeah, I sure can. And I'll just preface it by saying I think it's getting harder every day
Yeah.
to focus on the process and the love of the game. And it's not just, let me just also say this, it's not just those unicorn and rainbow kind of things.
Right.
Like I love the game. I play because I love the game. There's really
Right.
hard stuff
Hmm.
involved in all that. And there's expectation and there's pushing and there's challenging, but that's all part of the growth. And that's separate and apart from did we win or did we lose? What
Yeah.
does the scoreboard show at the end? There's really hard stuff on that, what we perceive as the soft side of competition. There's a lot of hard stuff in there.
Yeah.
And I was very, very fortunate to have a remarkable group of young women who had a tremendous season at Norman High School. We ended up winning our regular season, going undefeated. We went into playoffs and we played a rival team in the area finals, and Oklahoma State goes regional, area, and then state. And there's losers brackets all the way until you get to state. Once you get to state, if you lose, you're done. And in the finals of area, the game that sends you to state, we won by 32 points. And the team that beat us went to the losers bracket. And in an interview on TV before they played their losers bracket game, they said that they were motivated to win that game to get to state because they wanted another shot at Norman, our team.
Yeah.
And we're all
Yeah.
like, "Are you crazy? We just beat you by 30 plus. Like, what are you
Right.
talking about?" And we our student body took it. We had an incredible student body who supported our sports and our women's basketball team especially. And they made these t-shirts that said, "Be careful what you ask for" on the front, and on the back they said, "You just might get it."
Yeah.
And the rival team won their game, got back to the state tournament. First round of the state tournament, we won, they won. Second round, there's a rematch.
Yeah.
Semifinal state tournament, there's a rematch. And official throws the ball up, and we win the tip. And it's like we're playing with a square brick instead of a ball. We
Yeah.
can't dribble it. We
Yeah.
can't pass it. We can't shoot it. We can't make a layup. We can't make a free throw. It's awful. I called timeouts. I substituted. I changed offenses. I changed defenses. I did everything I could think of going at halftime, and we're behind. And it's the first time we'd been behind at halftime the entire year, undefeated, whole
Yeah.
season, halftime behind. I said, the good news is we can't play any worse than we just did in the first
Yeah.
half. The bad news is we only got 2 quarters to kind of turn this thing around. So we
Yeah.
go back out. And we play better in the second half, but not quite good enough. And
Yeah.
when the buzzer blows, we lose by 3. And it was the biggest upset in the history of ever. It
Yeah.
was, before leading up to the state tournament, it was hard to get the newspaper to cover it. The day after that big upset, my point guard's on the front page of the newspaper, holding her head and sobbing. We get, everybody loves a 5 alarm fire or a major car wreck from the
Yeah.
news media. And so we were the equivalent of that. We were everywhere. We were on talk radio, we were on TV, we were on the newspaper. Our kids were devastated. It was late in the evening in Tulsa. We stayed at the hotel, got up the next morning, got in our vans, drove back to Norman, and it was horrific. Kids were still sniffling, still struggling. There was no laughter. I turned the radio off because the only thing that was playing were sad country songs. It was just
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
We get back home. It's spring break. So we were still raw open wounds until we saw everyone again at school. And the week we came back, everybody would, teachers are like, "Oh, but you had such a great year." And a player would just fall down in the hall crying. And I get a
Yeah.
call, your
Yeah.
point guard's down in the library, run in and go get her. It was just really, really difficult. We went on into spring ball. We did our off season stuff. We went into summer. We across the city, we played summer league, and we would literally drive our bus over, get out of the bus, march in like surgeons, beat a team horrifically by 40, 50, get back on the bus like little doctors and drive back
Yeah.
to Norman. There was very little joy in what we did, but it
Yeah.
was like our little band was on a mission. They were
Yeah.
just going out and destroying people. fast forward to the fall, we get ready to practice and we're going through and I'm just telling my assistant coach, man, something's not right. Something's not right with these guys. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't feel right in the gym. And he said, oh, they know the most important time of the year. Hang on, they'll be fine. They'll figure it out. Okay, great. I waited about 2 weeks. I couldn't stand it anymore. I blew the whistle. So everybody in the locker room,
Yeah.
everybody in the locker room. So they file into the locker room and they're all just sitting there, looking heads down to the floor, sitting on a bench. And remember, they hadn't done anything wrong.
Yeah.
Practice hadn't started. We hadn't messed up a drill. We hadn't had any games yet. Nobody was late. Nobody was in trouble. They hadn't done anything wrong. And this locker room was like a tomb.
Yeah.
I said, what's going on? And nobody said anything. They just looked at the floor. And I said, what's the deal, guys? Nobody says anything. They look at the floor. I said, well, let me guess. Let me just take a stab at this. You're terrified. You're afraid to go about this thing and to go try to win a state championship and to go all in and dive in head first because you don't want to feel like you felt last spring. It was
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah.
And you don't ever want to feel like that again. And so then I got 15 sets of eyes looking at me and they're like, how did you know? And I tell them, I know how you feel because I felt that way last spring and I had to make a decision and I made a decision to be all in.
Yeah.
And you guys have to make that call too. And then I said to them, we are talented enough. And we had 3 players that went on and played major college basketball and one that played at low D1. And I said, we are talented enough to go through the motions and win this thing. We can win
Yeah.
it all. We're talented enough.
Yeah.
Or you can sort of tiptoe through this or you can dive headfirst into this and give it all you have and we might not win. So we got 2
Yeah.
options here. You can tiptoe through and we might win or you can dive headfirst and we might not win.
Yeah.
That's the thing about sports. There are
Yeah.
absolutely no guarantees. And then I told them, but I know this that if you dive in and go headfirst, even if you don't win, it will mean more than if you tiptoe through and do.
Yeah.
Because it's not about what you get at the end. It's
Yeah.
about the process. It's about the journey together. And then I went home and cried to my husband and
Yeah.
I don't know what I've done because I told them if you can't go all in, I can't coach you. If you're going to halfway, you're going to do it without me. And that's okay, but you're going to do it without me. So I had
Yeah.
a difficult night ahead. The next day I teaching, doing what I'm doing all day. And I don't really think that much about it till time for practice. Grab my whistle, run down the hallway to the gym. And before I opened the door, I knew what our team had decided. You could feel it. You
Yeah.
could smell it. You could taste it. They were laughing. They were talking. Practice hadn't started yet. Everybody was dripping with sweat. Some were doing individual drills on the side. Some were working 2-on-2. Some were doing shooting lines. It was organized. They were full of life. They were full of joy. And I walked to my assistant coach and said, we're going to win it all. And he was like,
Yeah.
stop. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. Don't jinx it.
no, they've got it. They
Yeah.
figured
Yeah.
it out.
Yeah.
They've jumped. And once they jumped, they never look back. And so sure enough, we went through the season. We end up back at Tulsa in the same gym where we had lost the previous season, and we play for the state championship. As we run out of the tunnel, we line up on the baseline. There was a college campus, and they do smoke and mirrors the whole 9 yards for introductions. And the spotlight locked on our team on the baseline, and they were all holding hands,
Yeah.
and every single one of them had tears rolling down their face. And they announced our starters one by one. Team came over, and it did not matter what I said. My appearance in that huddle, they could have won that game with me being 200 miles away
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they had long ago made the decision that they were going to do it together, all
Yeah.
in together. At
Yeah.
the end of the first quarter, we were ahead by 24. The opposing coach had used all of her timeouts. It was not going to be possible to beat our
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
When the game was over, we're in the locker room. And a reporter asks one of my players, is this great to get the monkey off your back? Do you finally feel vindicated now that you get back here and you get to reverse that feeling that you had a year ago, blah, blah, blah. And she stands up on a chair and says, Coach Coale, he doesn't get it. And
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
what a moment. Because she did and the team
Yeah.
did. And we got on the bus and we headed back to Norman and we got about 5 miles outside of town and realized that we had left the gold ball sitting in the locker room floor. And it's a true
Yeah.
story. It's a
Yeah.
true story. We had been so about the doing that it had sort of become immaterial what they gave you for getting it done.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was it was the best possible ending to a season. And because of that, and this is why the story I think is relevant, why it's so strong in my mind, and why I wanted to share it in the book, is because all of us involved in that journey, those players and coaches, we had a taste of what it feels like when something is right,
Yeah.
meaning you're all in together. Doesn't mean you're perfect. It just means there's been a commitment. And when there's that full commitment to
Hmm.
dive in and be together, I'm going to play for you, and you're going to
Yeah.
play for her, and she's going to play for her, and she's going to play for me. When there's that environment,
Yeah.
extraordinary things can happen. And once you experience that, you want every other environment in your life to be just like that
Yeah.
forever,
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah.
And when it's not, you can't always fix it. You can't always say why it's not. You can't always make it that way, but you always itch to try.
Yeah.
So those young women had an opportunity to figure out before it was time what they wanted a marriage to feel like, what kind of
Yeah.
parents they wanted to be, what jobs they would settle for and which ones they wouldn't, what
Yeah.
environments they would seek out, what kind of bosses and leaders they would be, all of those things, because they understood what it feels like
Yeah.
to connect, to wrap arms with somebody else and try to do hard things. I've been asked repeatedly since I walked away from coaching, what do you miss? And the only thing I miss is standing shoulder to shoulder with people doing really hard things,
Yeah.
because there is an extraordinary something something that comes to you and lands on you when you are locked arms in battle together. And that's what sports allow. That's what they give you.
Yeah, Sherry, I absolutely love it. And I know one of the lines in your book, you always talk about hard things, and that's what great teachers do. Like they swing open the door and they give you hard, right? And they see what you're going to do with it. And again, it's about creating these moments. It's not about the scoreboard. It's not about the end result. Because to be honest, Sherry, and your story backs it up. Within 2, 3 days, that feeling goes away, right?
Yeah.
Having the trophy, like, okay, great, I won the trophy, but they're never going to forget about those moments in the locker room. They're never going to forget about that bus ride when they forgot the trophy, right? And it's all I always relate it to, and I think about that quote from John Wooden, like, if I'm a successful coach, ask me in 20, 30 years, do I have successful young men? It's like successful young women. And that's what it's about, right? It's looking at the bigger picture. Are we creating these great young men and women? And it's beyond scoreboard, beyond winning. And I know, Sherry, you talk about finding your sweet spot, right? And I think this would be a great way to kind of wrap up our conversation. Is you would always challenge your kids when your feet hit the floor, you got to find that sweet spot, and talk to us about that. What is that sweet spot, and how do we make sure we pursue it, even though it's not guaranteed? Whatever we're going after, whatever our passion is, it's still not guaranteed.
No, nothing is. That's the kick about life.
Yeah,
I had a sign in a framed sign at the set on the end table of a sofa right as you came into my office at University of Oklahoma, and it said, "What makes your heart sing?"
yeah,
And I would ask our incoming freshmen that question, and they would squirm and want to crawl underneath the couch because it made them incredibly uncomfortable. And when they finally could muster words, usually what they would say is basketball. And I would say, I know you love to play, and I know that makes your heart sing, but beyond that,
yeah,
beyond basketball, what makes you, what do you do for an extended period of time that is really, really hard? And then when you're done, you have as much, if not more, energy than when you started.
yeah,
Is there something in your life that feels like that? And that was always a work in progress. I got to be
yeah,
honest with you. It was a work in progress. They would say, I don't know. And we would continue to ask that question. And maybe sometime around their junior year, they would say, it's this. It's when I do this. I feel like this makes me joyful, not just happy, but joyful. It's hard and I struggle with it, but when I'm done, I feel such pride and I have such confidence. So it's this. But it took a while to find that. And
yeah,
I think as coaches and teachers, what our job is to create environments where people can find that in themselves.
yeah,
We are not to hand that out. We
yeah,
are to create an environment that is fertile for that chase, if you will, for that
yeah,
digging expedition, so that young people can grapple with things. If you want to, I was asked after a speaking engagement the summer after I retired. It was Q&A after speaking engagement, and someone in the back, a gentleman stood up and said, "What made you think that you could go from being the head coach at Norman High School to being the head coach at the University of Oklahoma?" And at first, I was a little taken aback by that. I was like, "Okay,
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, wait.
never really been asked that in that way before."
Right.
But I so appreciated that question because it made me think about confidence and
Yeah.
where that confidence comes from. There were things that I knew I could do when I made the jump from high school coaching to college coaching. The time that we would be on the practice floor, the development of players, the preparation for a game, the on-court teaching, all that, I felt such confidence with because it's what I had been doing. And I knew that we did things that worked.
Yeah.
The other part of it, I knew nothing about. I'm going to have three assistants. What do they do? I remember saying, "What do three assistants do?" I only had one. I don't know. Budget, recruiting. There were all these facets of that new job that I didn't have any right to have confidence about because I hadn't done them yet.
Right. Yeah.
However, when he asked me that question, it made me think back to Healton, the little town where I grew up.
Yeah.
My confidence came from there. It was a little school. I had 46 or 7 people in my graduating class. I was the best player on the girls' basketball team, leading scorer, great, practiced all the time, awesome, loved it. I ran on the track team. I was the leadoff leg on the relay. I was not the fastest runner. I
Yeah.
hated every second of it. Never, ever enjoyed track, ever. I sang in the school choir. I starred in the school play. I went to academic competitions. When we painted fire hydrants in town because there was a contest, I painted a fire hydrant.
Yeah.
Whatever there was to do, I did it.
Yeah.
Why? Because if I didn't, there weren't enough people to go around. We all did. Everybody in that
Right.
town did it. Because
Yeah.
if you didn't all run track, you couldn't make a track team. If you didn't all sing in the choir, you wouldn't have a choir. I mean, that's how that unfolded.
Yeah.
And as a result, there were some things I was really, really good at, like basketball. And
Yeah.
there were some things that I wasn't that great at, like singing.
Yeah.
But I learned how to be the star and be the backup and be the one who's just helping make sure that we can have a play.
Yeah.
I learned how to do all those things. And as a result, when I left Hilton and went to college, I did not think there was anything that I couldn't do.
Yeah.
So I think that the ability to do hard things is portable.
Yeah.
You can, I knew how to run that basketball program on the court, but I also knew that what it took to do that, I had in me. And so I could
Yeah.
apply that to all the stuff off the court and figure out how to do that. That's what I think coaches have to understand about the environments that they create for their athletes is they're allowing their athletes to build a skill that will serve them for the rest of their lives. And
Yeah.
it's not a left-handed layup or in and out crossover dribble. It's an ability to do hard things,
Yeah.
to elevate to the necessary level of the challenge that's in front of you. And if you can do that, you can do anything as you
Yeah.
move forward.
Yeah, I absolutely love it, Sherry. And then the other big thing that jumped out is, you're creating an identity beyond just being a basketball player or just being a track and field athlete. Like we're setting our kids up to see all the different possibilities they can become. And again, sometimes we focus just on athlete, 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 but now we're opening up the door to different possibilities, right? And that's what gets me fired up about coaching is we get to create an environment of possibilities, right? And like you said, we have to challenge our kids. We have to give them hard things, and we understand they're going to fail. But again, that's our best teacher, right? But we're going to support the heck out of them. We're going to pick them up, and then we're going to keep moving forward to discover these new possibilities. And so, with that, Sherry, are there any last thoughts you have for our listeners as far as coaching, teaching, anything you want to leave with it? I know, Sherry, when you write, your mission is to get people to think and feel. So is there any final thoughts you have for our listeners today?
Well, I would just maybe wrap it up with this. It may seem that writing is a 180 degrees away from coaching basketball.
Yeah.
And It's really not. And this kind of goes back to what we just spoke about with the ability to do hard things being a portable skill.
Yeah.
Um, you get up every day as a writer and you write, and
Yeah.
it's not easy. Sometimes it's extremely hard to get started. Sometimes you get stuck in the middle and it doesn't feel like there is a door or a window anywhere. And it feels like you're thinking so hard, you're gonna sweat blood out your forehead sometimes.
Yeah.
But you just keep going. And some days you sit down and write and it's just trash and you hit delete and you got nothing to show for your work. And
Yeah.
some days it's not. And that's exactly what the life of an athlete is like. You go to the gym and some days it feels like butter coming out of your hand.
Yeah.
Some days it just you spend more time chasing your rebounds than you do getting shots up because it won't go in no matter what. But you go and you spend that hour or 2 hours in the gym anyway. It's the constancy, it's the showing up that matters. Does it make you a better writer? Does it make you a better basketball player? Absolutely. Does
Yeah.
it up the odds of you being able to achieve what you want to achieve? The showing up every day? Absolutely, it does. Does it guarantee that you get a book published? Does it guarantee that you become an all-stater? Does it guarantee that you win a league championship? No,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
But the practice of showing up every day and giving the best that you have will translate into any and every area of your life. And maybe most importantly, it translates into your relationships with people.
Yeah.
That's the bedrock of whatever we do. It's those relationships that we have with people. And when you think about the people that matter most to you, they're people who show up.
Yeah.
They're people who show up. And
Yeah.
so developing that as a skill set is incredibly important. And I think if coaches and teachers can think about, and it's so hard to do this because you have so much to do. There are
Yeah.
so many responsibilities now more than ever before hanging over the head of a teacher or a coach.
Yeah.
But you have to find a way to remove yourself from all that. And in my mind, it's flying up to the top branch of a tree and
Yeah.
looking down on the opportunity that you have, these little lives that you get to pour into. If you can think about what you're giving them, which is more than a skill, it's more than knowledge, it's an innate ability, it's something that they have in them because of the environment that you provide. They
Yeah.
build it themselves, they leave and have a sense that they can do great things.
Yeah.
And I was asked, I'll just close with this and let you wrap up in any way you wish, but I was asked at a speaking event just this past week as we were rolling out the compost file at a launch party. I was asked about my players and if there was a common thread among the players who achieved and were, the most heralded players in our program. And I said, of course, there has to be a passion for the game, and there has to be a work ethic and a toughness, of course. But the distinguishing trait between the players who made it and the players who didn't, and made it is relative for maybe a walk-on who makes the team, it may be a player who becomes a starter, it may be a starter who becomes an All-American. It's relative. But for the players who made it, the one common trait that they all shared was a healthy sense of self.
Yeah.
They had a confidence that floored any and every endeavor. How do people get confidence? They
Yeah.
do hard things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, teachers and coaches, that's what you're building. So, don't think about it as we're chasing a championship. I'm trying to create an environment where a kid can build their own confidence and that fuels the rest of their lives. So if you can fly up to the top branch of the tree and remember that.
Yeah. Absolutely love it, Sherry. And one thing you said is we have to show up, right? And I just have to personally thank you, Sherry. 2 years ago, you showed up in my life. And I sent that email after reading the book, and I wanted to roll out this theme on our campus because, again, all the stuff you're talking about, challenging our kids to do hard things, creating the best environment and experience on our campus. And reading your book and you showing up in my life and learning about the Redwoods and hearing your stories and just reading your blogs, and you have constantly been in my life these past 2 years. And Sherri, I can't thank you enough because you have made me a better person. You have made me a better leader, and you have made Canterbury School a better place within our athletic department. So I
Wow.
can't thank you enough for being on the Being Champions podcast, Sherri.
Well, that is so kind of you to say. It means a ton to me. And if if all of our schools had such visionary leadership as you provide at Canterbury, we'd be in a better spot. So hopefully it's contagious and a lot of people, you'll rub off on a lot of people.
That's the mission, Sherri. So again, with that, I can't thank you enough. If our listeners wanted to reach out, what's the best place to reach out to learn more from you?
SherriCoale.com is my website. And I'm not big on social media, so
Yeah.
the website is the best place to locate me. The books, both books can be ordered at Amazon or Barnes and Noble online, or if you'd like for them to be personalized, you can order them off my website and I'll personalize them and ship them to you. So it's just been an honor getting to know you and find out about Canterbury, Matt. The things that you've done have just been extraordinary, and you've sent me little t-shirts along the way,
Yeah, yeah,
PowerPoints of what you're doing, and
yeah.
that is that's super rewarding. That's the kind of stuff that makes me continue to want to get up and try to write good words in the morning.
Yeah, and like you said, Sherri, it's us linking arms together, right? And this is how we get better together. So, again, I can't thank you enough, and I'll keep sending you emails. I'll send you T-shirts, and we'll stay in contact. So, thanks again, Sherri.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing the books. Appreciate you.
No problem. Hey, listen, I hope you all had some great takeaways from this conversation with Sherri. I think my biggest takeaway was at the very end, and Sherri's talking about our ability to do hard things. And one line I want to share from her book that kind of wraps everything up, where she says, great teachers do that. They crack open a door and cue the siren's song that lures you in. Once inside, they give you hard, and then they let you decide what to do about it. I live indebted to them for the view. And I think that's the biggest thing as teachers, as coaches, as leaders. Like, our job, our responsibility is to show our athletes or show our students or show the next generation where to look, but not what to see. And our kids, athletes, if you're listening, you can do hard things. And that's the biggest thing. Once you realize you can do hard things, you are going to have the capability and ability to do amazing things. So with that, coaches, look at your environment, make sure we're creating hard things, make sure we're supporting our kids, and let's make sure everyone is thriving together. So once again, I appreciate everyone tuning in and hope you all tune in next week to the Being Champions podcast.